Hi, my name's David Montesano. I'm an admissions strategist at College Match. And today's topic that I'd like to present is waitlisted, what to do. I want to help you think the way colleges think to help you get off the wait list. So I'd like today's session to be as interactive as possible. If you wouldn't mind, let's go ahead and I know we've got 7 participants right now, I think. If we can get everybody asking questions, that would be perfect. So we can have a really robust discussion, and it would make it probably more valuable for you as well. So go ahead. I'm gonna as you go ahead and type in your questions, I'm gonna go ahead and start the presentation. So really, what is waitlisting? And I guess the bigger issue is how did I get here? If I'm waitlisted, it's kind of right. It's kind of you're sort of in purgatory or in limbo. You're not admitted. You're not denied. You're just kind of the slack in the rope that's you're helping the college in a sense. And we'll talk about why the reasons for the waitlisting. There's a couple reasons that are pretty straightforward. One is that you have a low GPA or class rank. By the way, I want to mention that there's probably not just one reason that you're waitlisted. There's probably a number of reasons, but here's some of the reasons that I think are most common: low GPA and class rank, or low test scores. And when I say low GPA, let's think about that for a second. What do we really mean by that? What we mean is that the GPA is lower than the average GPA. And it's probably unweighted in most cases, lower than the average. So in other words, you're kind of dragging their average GPA down a little bit. Or the class rank. Your class rank might be top 25, and they want to improve and take mostly top 10% students. And in that case, that could be the reason that you got waitlisted. So you're just kind of maybe even, maybe you're in the top, 11% of your class, which doesn't really make a huge difference, obviously, but to the colleges it might, right? So in terms of the way they look to the U.S. News and World Report or these other rankings where they report this information back, it might be important for them to be in the top 10, have you in the top 10%. And if you're in the 11%, that might just, kind of knock their data off by a little bit. So it really is more about them than it is about you. That's the good news. But the other thing is a lack of significant extracurricular academic activities as compared with other applicants. You might do a lot of leadership stuff, but colleges are really looking for academic extracurriculars first and then leadership second. The other thing is, if you're looking at some private schools, they may not be need blind, and financial aid might be the issue. You might have actually asked for financial aid when they weren't prepared to give it to you, at least not at your class rank number, or your GPA number, or the kind of extracurriculars you had, or even your, based on what your teachers are saying or your essay. So those are kind of all the major factors in admission. The other thing is the essay itself might have been lacked a little bit of emotional connection. We see this a lot. I had a student the other day who we believe didn't get into school because his essay, actually we got the student a little late, but we feel like that his essay was a little bit flat. So when we looked it over, we think that's the reason that the student didn't get in, and we were able to help kind of mount an appeal. But that can often be the case, or that other applicants were just seemed too similar, and you just didn't stand out somehow. You got kind of caught in with a band of 15 other 15,000 other people, with the same GPA, the same gender, the same similar test scores, and somewhat similar extracurriculars and similar teacher recommendations, and maybe a similar essay. It just somehow you just didn't stand out. And the other thing is, part of that is just that your message of value about that should be unique, right, got somehow watered down or muddled by the time that it hit your application. The other thing is that there might have been a red flag raised, and this could be an issue of say there's some kind of feeling about something you did, or maybe you mentioned that you were depressed, or something that could be construed as potentially a negative impact. So anyway, these are some reasons maybe why you got waitlisted, just maybe. Okay, so there's a number of reasons that anyone can be waitlisted, and it's probably a number of reasons that you were waitlisted. Anyone have any questions so far, by the way? It'd be great to hear from you. So let's talk about that. If you're waitlisted, what does it mean? It means that you're not admitted, yet you're not denied, right? So you're kind of in that in-between spot. The waitlist serves as the college's insurance policy, right? So it's here, I hate to say it, but your application is their backup plan. So it's kind of like they're saying maybe to you. They're not saying yes or no. And so they're kind of holding you a little bit at arm's distance, right? So for you, it seems like maybe there's a possibility. And for them, they're kind of thinking, well, we'll only use this as a backup plan. So they don't know if they're going to use it basically until they hear from other respondents and other admittees whether or not those people want to come to the school, right? That makes sense. So we just don't know if they're going to use your application or have to go to their backups, right? That's really the way it is. And again, this isn't very personal. I hate to say it, but there may be a ranking. We'll get into that in a second. You may be able to figure out that the waitlist is ranked, and you might want to sort of inquire as to where you are on that waitlist. But let's talk a little bit more about why colleges need to waitlist people anyway. Well, part of it is that there's this thing called a yield rate, and a yield rate is really the principal reason behind why colleges use a waitlist. So here's an example, and this is a year-old data, but 2013, Harvard's yield rate was 82%, Stanford's was 76%, Chicago's 54%, Michigan's 41%, USC's 32%, Emory's 29%, and then Boston U's was only 21%. So what does that yield rate really mean? And I'm not trying to bug you with anything extra that you don't really need to know, but this is helpful if you're on a waiting list. You should know about this. The yield rate is basically the percentage of times or the percentage of students that take the offer when it's offered to them. So if they're admitted, 82% of the time, students that are admitted to Harvard take the offer. So unbelievably, right? We would imagine that 100% of the people that get accepted to Harvard would take the offer, but it obviously isn't that way. And then it just plummets dramatically once you get away from Harvard. Stanford, which is I would say arguably, if not the same difficulty of admission to Harvard, it can be slightly more difficult, but it has a slightly lower yield rate. Chicago has, roughly half the people. Michigan, it starts really going lower. And with Boston U, only 21% of the people are taking the offer. So there's much more of a chance that, if you're applying to Boston U and you get waitlisted, that they'll go to the waitlist, right? Because there's so much more uncertainty for Boston U than there is for Harvard. It's almost like the opposite situation, right? Harvard, there's only 20% of the time that people aren't going to show up. So they will, if they have to go to the wait list, they've got some slack there. And then with Boston, there's 80% of the time people aren't going to show up. So they really might have to use the wait list. So it just kind of gives you an idea. Any questions so far? I can't believe no one has questions. Really? This is a pretty important topic. Seriously? Okay. Well, I don't want to guilt you into having questions, but if you do have any questions, please go ahead and type those in if you would. Now, the chances of getting in from the wait list, I'm sure that's a really important question on your mind. If you're on a wait list, that's the only question, right? Like, what is my odds? What are my odds? What are my chances? Harvard right now, roughly, previous years, I should say, it's less than 1%. And every year it's going to be different. So I don't know what it is this year. There's no way to know. But if we look at trends, they don't change so dramatically, typically. So I would say Harvard less than 1%, Stanford 1%. Those aren't great odds, are they? University of Chicago 1%, William & Mary's 10%. Iowa, I wasn't able to get the stat, but Southern Methodist U was 26%. Now, these are a little bit old numbers, but just want to let you know. Marquette, 35%. These are a couple years old. Okay, so that kind of tells us something, right? So if you're waitlisted, and it's the same idea, right? So if it's Stanford or Harvard, probably it's 99% or more against getting in. William & Mary, it's 90% against getting in. But Southern Methodist, it starts getting better, right? So you've got like 75% against getting in, but you still have this like 26% chance of getting in. And then Marquette, wow, it's 35% chance of acceptance off the wait list. So those are pretty good. Okay, so one student wrote in, should I be thinking about putting down a deposit at my other colleges if I'm still on the wait list at my dream school? This is a great question, okay, and this comes from Malik. Yes, absolutely, Malik. I would definitely say that if you have another offer, you shouldn't wait for the wait list, okay? Don't wait on the wait list. It just doesn't make sense, right? As you can see from these stats, it's not a sure thing. What is sure for you is that other offer that you have. So I would absolutely proceed as though the wait list isn't real for you. It's not, it's not a for sure thing, and this is, much more of a for sure thing with the existing college. And I would absolutely encourage you to put down your deposit on the sure thing. Don't wait for this other thing that there's just potentially not as much of a chance at. It's not a real thing yet. Okay. So if you have an existing acceptance, that's real. This isn't real yet. Okay. So here's a sample. Just we're taking one school, University of Virginia. And again, this is a little older data, but it was some that I could pull up from 2012, 11, 12, from the common data set, and that's a great source of information. Okay, um, and basically, this is for University of Virginia, one of the flagship, state universities in the country, one of the best, absolutely. Thomas Jefferson's College, as they call it. So they have a policy of placing students on the waiting list, yes. The number of qualified applicants offered a place was 4,326. The number accepting a place was 2,726. Now, wait a minute. That's really interesting, isn't it? Look at that for a second, okay? So right away, only roughly half the people, a little bit more than half the people, accepted a place on the wait list, right? So Virginia is offering all of these people a spot, and only 2,700 accepted a spot. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the other people presumably had another option. They weren't going to wait around. They said, just like, don't worry about me. I've got another option. I'm going to go. I'm going to take, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, or Duke, or whatever other offer I have, or Emory. I'm not going to wait. Don't worry about me. Please use that spot, or that wait list spot, I should say. It's not a real spot yet. So the good news is that you need to accept a spot on the waiting list. That's really part of the step-by-step kind of approach to getting off the wait list. So as you could see already, the field is culled to half right away by the number of just people that don't even accept a spot on the list. So you have an advantage just by saying, yes, I'll accept a spot on the wait list, right? That's pretty cool. And then they say from that, though, 191 were accepted, right, from 2726. So what is that? So that's not, those odds aren't amazing, right? So 191, we'll divide that by 2726. So basically, the chances were really low, like 7% or less, right? No, I think it's much lower than that. So it's 0.07%, I believe. I got that. Anyone else have a different number? That's great. But basically, those are not great odds. Those, is that 7? No, it shouldn't be 7%. It's actually less. Yeah, it's 0.07. Not even 1% chance. So I don't know. Just to kind of give you an extreme example, there are many schools that do bring people in significant numbers off the wait list. So this is maybe a bad example to show you up front, but just kind of wanted to give you an example where they actually show kind of step by step how they go through it. And that's the thing to concentrate here, more than the fact that there really isn't very much of a chance. It's more important that you can see, well, there's this number on the wait list that are offered, and then this number that accepted, and then this number that they admitted, and that they don't rank the wait list. So that's something that's also important to note. Okay, let's look at our next slide here. What are people looking for? Let me make sure this is the right slide. Yep. Whoops. Okay. I think we went through it. Let me go back one. Okay, yeah. I think I skipped one here. Okay, so what factors matter the most, in terms of how schools look at the wait list and what it does for them? Because again, this is more about them. They're selfish, and you need to kind of think about it that way. So anyone have any other questions, by the way? I'm going to answer Sidra's question here in a second. Thank you very much for that question. So anyone else, please go ahead and write in. So what colleges look at is, what's in it for them? Well, it takes up slack if their estimates run off course, which could happen, right? It's like booking an airline. They don't know who's going to show up that year. So they know what happened last year, but they may get more applicants or fewer applicants, and they really don't know exactly what's going to happen. They have enrollment managers that try to figure that stuff out, and algorithms that help them. But it may not work. It may not work perfectly. And I don't think it ever works perfectly, frankly. So the good news is that you can use that to your advantage. It takes up slack. Remember, it's kind of slack if their estimates run off course. It hedges against any kind of change, like a bad economic climate or anything like that. It also corrects imbalances like gender imbalance, domestic versus international, minority, legacy development, athletic recruits, all that stuff. If they have too much of any one thing, they can go to the wait list, and then they can sort of right that imbalance by doing that, okay, just to kind of give you an idea. So Sidra had a question. What happens if you miss the deposit deadline of a college, just out of curiosity? Great question, Sidra. Basically, it's a great question. Don't miss the deadline, is my advice. They could give it away to somebody else. So you don't want to do that. You need to get on the phone. I don't think you've missed it, because May 1st is generally the deposit deadline. But if you have, or don't plan on missing it, okay? Make sure you've got plenty of time. don't wait until May 1st, because sometimes that's just a postmark. It's a due date, meaning they need to get your deposit by then, and it's not a postmark by date. So I would just treat it like they need to get your deposit by May 1st, either electronically or in hand. Okay, so through the mail. And what I would do is call them immediately. Call them, email your rep, call them, just keep calling, keep emailing until you get somebody on the phone and tell them that you want to go there and that the money's on its way or that it's already been sent. And fax it, FedEx it, whatever you have to do to get it there. That's what I would recommend, okay? So don't miss the deadline. If you want the school, don't miss it, because what colleges do, and I don't know if you know this, but if you miss the deadline, they just assume you're not interested. So that, I hope, answers your question. Okay, please, anyone else have any other questions? Let's get those out here. Great. We're getting a few more. Good. I'm glad to see those. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what matters, why it matters to the colleges, and that was a really important slide for you to know, kind of how they use it. Okay, now we talked about yield rates. Okay, now some other kind of factors that important questions for you to figure out are, what are the yield rates for freshmen, and what are the yield rates for transfers, because that can also affect things a little bit. And does the college rank the wait list? Okay, and then one more thing, which is kind of hard to figure out, but you should definitely do this, is what are the college's unmet needs? Okay, so for example, you might think, things like we talked about, like, is there an imbalance? You won't know that stuff necessarily. Is there a gender imbalance, or did they admit too many legacies this year? There's no way to know that. But what I would do is look more broadly at what the weaknesses of the college are. And a great website for that is studentsreview.com. You can start to research what students don't like about a college, and through that you might be able to detect some of the weaknesses and therefore unmet needs that you could then sort of market to. And that's what we're going to get into here, is how do you market? How do you get off the wait list? We're going to help you with that. So your first thing is to determine what the college's needs are. Before you do the marketing to them, you want to determine what your target audience's unmet needs are. How can you appeal to those, right? Because after all, if you don't appeal to them, for example, solve a problem for them, there's no reason for the admit. Okay, does that make sense? Good. So let's back up a second. What are colleges actually looking for? They're looking for angular students. They're not looking for well-rounded. You might be well-rounded, I'm well-rounded, you're well-rounded, we're all well-rounded. But what we need to do is show them an angular sort of something that we do that's really excellent at the top level. Something that we're really focused, that we do kind of deeply, right? That we're not super broad, but we do one thing and we kind of focus on that. We also need to show them proven value that meets their need and provides diversity of some sort. Doesn't mean it has to be ethnic diversity or even economic diversity, but it could be something as simple as this. What if everyone's high functioning and there aren't any students with learning disabilities? If you could find that information out, that could certainly be diversity, right? You could broaden the class. Or it could be economic diversity. Maybe they have ethnic diversity, but they don't have anybody that's not enough poor kids. And you can look at their Pell Grant rates, that kind of thing, to figure out which schools have economic diversity and which ones don't. And if you market your economic diversity to the ones that don't, you're probably going to get a better result, because again, it's all about helping the colleges get where they want to go. And colleges want to be diverse. They want to be worldly. They want to be sophisticated and economically diverse, socially, racially, everything. They want all the sports teams. They want everything. So they say they're here, but they're really here. And how can you help them get where they want to go? If you do that, then you get in. It's that simple, okay? So the other issue is, here's another thing. So it's not only value in terms of academics or some kind of diversity, but it's also financial for colleges. Don't forget that. So if possible, if you've already said you need financial aid and you accidentally said that on your application, now you figure out that you don't need it, you can say to them, I don't need financial aid. I made a mistake, I don't need it. And that would actually help your situation, because then that frees up monies, not frees up monies, but it sweetens the deal, basically, okay? Let me take another question here. Kathleen asks, would applying as a transfer student give a previously waitlisted student better chances of acceptance over other transfer students? Wow, that's a great question. Kathleen, it really depends, okay? My sense of it is it's a great question. I don't know. I mean, in some ways, yes, you would think so, because the student was already vetted previously and they got to that point where they're waitlisted, right? So surely that must say something about the candidate. On the other hand, the colleges didn't say yes, or the college didn't say yes. So there is still something that's wrong, and maybe many things that are wrong about this candidate. So it's not real. It's more of a, by them not saying yes, I wouldn't say that you're really yet in that acceptance field, and so I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference. I'll be honest. I just don't. I think you're not truly accepted by them, and you're just kind of in this, kind of maybe sort of category, which doesn't give us enough clarity or confidence to say, hey, that's a great thing. So, I mean, I don't know. I just personally wouldn't emphasize that you were waitlisted. I don't think it's going to help. Okay, I hope that answered your question. And we've got, answer one more here. Please, any other questions? These are great questions. Thank you very much, Kathleen. The next question is Suzette asks, what's the difference if they rank the waitlist or not? Perfect. Okay. So it's the difference here, Suzette, is that if the college ranks the waitlist, then you can figure out where you are in that ranking as a waitlisted person or an applicant. So, for example, if I'm number, 300 on a wait list, surely that's not as good as being number 5, right? It's kind of like, think about it this way. It's just a long line. And it's kind of like, have you ever been to, tried to, get into something, I don't know, buy Nike shoes or get into a movie or something where there's an extremely long line and they don't have room for everybody? A concert's a great example of something where not everybody has tickets. They don't, and you can just tell that there's only seats for like, a certain number of people that are in this kind of waiting line, right? It's the same thing here. So, you don't want to be the last person in line. It's just the chances are almost non-existent. But if you're toward the front, you might get in. And that's kind of why it's important to note if they rank the wait list or not. I hope that helps answer your question. Thank you, Suzette. Any other questions? This is great, you guys. So keep asking the questions. Oh wait, here's one more that's relating to this. So Sidra comes back with another question. Go, Sidra. If the college doesn't rank the wait list and say that they reevaluate everyone, what can you do this time to stand out? Great question, Sidra. That's what we're here to talk about today, and I will get to that in a second. That's exactly where we're heading. Okay, any other questions? Please go ahead and type them in right now. That's wonderful. You guys are doing really well. Okay, so you know what colleges' needs are. You got to investigate their needs. That's the most important thing up front. You got to understand your target audience and know their needs before you market to them, okay? All right, so next what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more vaguely about how they do admission and, maybe kind of what they're looking for and factors that could still help you, things you should emphasize no matter what. So if you're being recruited, if you're on the wait list and you're being a recruited athlete, right? I don't know if you know this, but 40% of the college class is usually taken up by what we term flagged or tagged candidates, people who are legacies, mom or dad attended as an undergraduate at that particular college, athletes that are recruited for a sports team at that school, and have clout with the admission, the coach has clout with the admission office, and underrepresented minorities. And this is kind of a tough area. I know I work with a lot of Asian American clients who may or may not be considered underrepresented at schools, but don't rule yourself out, especially if you're if you're in a category that's special. I have a student this year that I was working with who was Chinese, and you think, wow, that's a really big category. Chinese American, that's gigantic. So many Chinese Americans going, that won't help. But in fact, this young lady was, she was part of this Manchu group, which was an ethnic minority within China. So that was actually a way for her to stand out and position herself in a unique way that did matter. So even though her, Asian Americans were overrepresented in most of the schools she got into, Manchus were not, and therefore she had an advantage. So it's all about having an advantage. So you're sort of taking stock here. What are some other forms of competitive advantage that you might have? Now we know what the college's needs are. Now we got to take stock and say, okay, what are my advantages, right? What are my points of difference? How am I different academically, athletically, or leadership, from a leadership perspective? And then what are the college's unmet needs, right? We're going to put those two things together and we're going to draft a waitlist letter right now. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So next, what we're going to look at, one more thing, sorry. We're going to look at just show you the competitive dynamic and how you get in. So there's you on one end and the dream college on the other, the applicants in the middle, the applicant pool in the middle. We're going to line up in this letter, we're going to line up your points of difference to bypass the weaknesses in the applicant pool to meet your unmet need. And that's how you're going to get in, okay? So let's talk about now how to build your actual waitlist response letter, okay? So step one, you want to identify the reason for the waitlisting. Now here's what you can do tangibly, okay? You can ask your high school counselor to contact the college's admission office. If they won't do it, you can do it. You have the right to call them and ask them, hey, what were the reasons that I wasn't admitted directly to your college, okay? And they're going to tell you, they'll tell you. Number two, you can identify if the wait list is ranked. You can call the college and ask them that, okay? At the same time, okay? You can also draft your waitlist reversal letter, which we're going to do right now. Okay, so those are the 3 steps here. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's an example of the waitlist deferral letter. It's really small font size here, but hopefully you can read it. At least on my version, it's a little bit small. So you're going to kind of introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm on the wait list. I'd like to accept a spot. Okay, that's the number one thing. You have to say, I'd like to accept, and I don't think this letter does, but anyway. It says, thank you for extending me a position, but you need to say, I accept a spot on the wait list, okay? And then you should reiterate that this is your top school. And if admitted, you will attend. That's a really nice thing to say, because then it gives them more assurance. Again, back to their yield rate, right? Maybe 20% of the time people can say, hey, I want to get off the wait list, but they don't, only 20% of the time they show up at the school. So it's really important to give them security. If they're going to admit you, you want to say to them, I will attend. If admitted, I will attend. Okay, so that's why I emboldened that statement there. And you could say, I'm interested, in whatever, and I'd like to update you on my most recent accomplishments, okay? First of all, what you want to hit on here is anything from your classes that's academic. Any grades that are A grades. You want to break those A grades into kind of distinctions, right? You want to basically build those into distinctions. So if you got an A grade on a paper, you want to basically give the name of the paper, you want to give the teacher's comment on the paper, and the name of the class. And that's to kind of help you build that academic distinction. The next thing that you want to do is you want to basically talk about it. So any A grades are game. You want to basically build those, translate those into distinctions. And then you might also talk about any national academic. So what I would do is grade this. I would say national academic honors first, then state level, then local level, your high school. But I would start with your high school grades first. Let me reiterate this. Let me say this again. Start with your high school grades first, and then any test scores, any SAT or ACT scores that are higher, since you applied, okay? So since you applied, what are the grades that are A's, or the GPA, how's it gone up? Grades that are A's and the GPA increase, right? The new GPA. And then from that new semester or quarter or whatever. And then any new test scores, okay? And then after that, I want you to layer in your national level academic extracurriculars that are national academic honors or awards, and then state level, and then local level of your high school after that, okay? And then leadership after that, national, state, local, high school level, okay? That's the best way to kind of architect this. And then what you're going to have here is a closing statement. So you're going to have a positioning statement which really says, hey, this is my theme of value. Think about a theme of value that resonates with their unmet need. That's why it's so important to research what their unmet need is at the school, okay? Any questions? Let's see here. No questions. Oh, come on, you guys. I know. Well, I guess everyone's asked a question probably. We only have 5 people. Let's see. We have how many people in here? Okay, yeah. We've got 5 attendees, and we've had a number of questions. But anyone else have repeat questions? This is a great time. It's a small discussion group, so there's plenty of room for you to ask questions. All right, so next slide here. Okay, so this is just kind of the final one here. Basically, if you have any any other thoughts or questions, there are some resources that can help you, and these are my own resources that I'm plugging right now. But I have a book that's coming out, and that's brand new book. It's called Brand New: 4 Steps to the College of Your Dreams. You can also look around on collegematchus.com, which is my website. And we also have a service that if you're waitlisted, it's probably too late. But if you know anyone else that can use it, it's the whole kind of a college process, if you will, a learning system around developing your list of schools and then applying to schools, and that's unifluence.com. So check those out. Now, if you have any other questions, we have a little bit more time here. We're only about halfway through our time. So I will wrap up unless I see other questions. So this is a great time to ask other questions, okay? So Suzette asks, are these PowerPoint slides going to be available? Well, I think, Suzette, that I believe that on the College Week Live website, they will be leaving the presentation up for a while, and you can see the slides there, I believe. I hope that will be good for you, work for you. So, okay, I'm going to give you guys a couple more minutes here. If you have any other questions, this is a great time to ask. Otherwise, we're going to kind of close up. Okay, so Sidra says, I already wrote a letter of continued interest. Is there something else I can do? I didn't put all my achievements on there. I emailed it. Yeah, absolutely. You can write a new letter, Sidra. It doesn't hurt. So let me ask you a question. Sidra, what's your favorite food? And you can just type it in here so I can in real time so I can get it. And then can you type in what your favorite food is, Sidra? Because it's a kind of it's a way for you to remember. I have a kind of a technique here, a trick for you to remember how to do this. Okay. Okay. And then we've got some other questions here, but if Sidra can get back to me, great. Pizza, perfect. Okay, so Sidra, your favorite food is pizza. Think about it this way. When you're providing information about your academic awards or honors, or you're providing information about your most recent accomplishments and leadership or whatever, basically, or your academic distinctions, your grades, your new test scores, all that stuff, that is pure pizza for the colleges. They do not get tired of eating pizza. They love pizza, and they'll have it for 3 meals a day. So do not worry about sending them a second letter, a third letter. Think about it like you're sending them pizza, okay? You're just giving them more pizza. They love pizza like you do, so don't worry. That's the best way I can help you remember that, okay? To get you not to feel bashful about it, you've got to send them more information. You have nothing to lose at all. So one more. Here's another question, and we have time for more questions too. So please ask more questions. Kathleen asks, "It's hard to ask questions and listen at the same time." I was thinking, okay, maybe that's in response to this. You mean in this format here? I was thinking to somehow let the school know you are very interested, and if perhaps even delayed starting school for the chance to begin there. Not sure if this is grammatically correct because I'm listening to you too. Okay, Kathleen. Yeah, no, I'm not sure. It might be, I'm just not sure I understand the question, but let me try to see if I could. Okay, so you're saying somehow let the school know that you're very interested, but delay starting school for the chance to begin. I'm going to need some clarification. Sorry, if you don't mind. Just if you can clarify a little bit, that would be great. Okay, so Sidra asks, they won't get annoyed at all. Also, is there anything besides a letter that I can do? Well, that's a great question, Sidra. People have tried other things. You could do like a YouTube video. That might work. But pretty much apart from that, here's some other things you can do. And I forgot to mention this. This is really critical. You can have your teachers write letters of recommendation on your behalf as well. And I do recommend that. So I would get at least 2 more letters of recommendation in addition to that letter, the waitlist reversal letter that we talked about, the waitlist response letter. Because that would be a really good thing for you to do. So have 2 teachers write you new letters right away to the on your behalf to the college. Have them send those right away, and then have your counselor call, find out the reasons. Obviously, maybe you should do that first, and then you write your response letter, and then write another one, and then also have your teachers write their letters. You should all be responding to the reasons that the college gives for the waitlisting, right? So it's more strategic to do that. Okay, they won't get annoyed. Remember, it's all pizza. Okay, so Kathleen, okay, good. So Kathleen's saying here, oh, great, Kathleen, you gave me an example. Dear University, I'd really like to go to your school. Might I do something which in a year's time would improve my chances of getting in? Oh, I see what you're asking. Okay. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Here's what I'm worried about. You could ask them that question. It doesn't hurt to ask, okay? I think it could only help you. My concern is that you might not get a very precise answer. You might not get one that's personalized or customized to what you need. I hope you would, okay? But it's the same thing. But you could ask instead, why didn't I get in? Why am I waitlisted? Which will give you the same information, right? So I think we're just kind of going about it this, I think you're asking the question just from a different angle. I think it's the same question fundamentally. I think you're saying, why didn't I get in? Which is what I could improve on, right? I mean, so I don't think necessarily, now if you're asking for them to give you specific guidance in what you could do, like the names of the exact writing program that you could do or the exact, I think that's where you need consulting help. You need counseling on that, okay? That's the kind of stuff that I do and many other counselors do. So you can certainly write an email to me and we can talk about that. But my email address is david@collegematchus.com or just go to the website there. But basically, that's essentially, you need guidance to figure out those things. The college it's not their responsibility to tell you how to do that. But you can ask them the reasons you didn't get in, and then certainly get some help from someone who maybe has some resources or knows some resources for you and can actually guide you through that process of improving. Okay. All right, those are great questions. Let me see, and if there aren't any other questions, we're going to wrap up here shortly, but great questions. Keep them coming for as long as you like. We still have a little more time if you like. Okay, Kathleen, you're very welcome. You just said thank you. Okay, do you have any other questions before you go? All right, you're still here, I think. So if you have any other questions, this is a great time. I mean, I am so happy, and we've got a couple people who haven't asked questions here. So this is a great time to get some personal attention. And I can tell you right now, nobody's getting personal attention out there pretty much. So if you had just anything in your specific case that you'd like some personal attention on, I'm more than happy right now to help you. So please type in the questions, okay? Take advantage of this. Oh, this is a great question from Sidra. Sidra, lots of great questions, by the way. You're doing really well, asking all the right questions. How long do you have to wait to get off the wait list? Great question. Great question. This is so pertinent. So this is why, if you have another offer in hand, you should accept it, because you shouldn't wait to get off the wait list, because it could be a protracted period of time, which could go all the way basically up to or near. It shouldn't, but it could go up toward the fall. I mean, it shouldn't. It should basically kind of wrap up right after May. So here's what happens. By May, they know whether or not people have accepted their offer, right? So back to that example of Boston University at 21% of the yield rate, right? So Boston is going to figure out, did the 21% go up to, did 30% of our people accept our offer this year? Or is it still 20 something, So if it's 20 something, then they're going to think to themselves, now we've got to go to our wait list. And then they're going to go to their wait list, which is exactly the next thing they're going to do, which is in May. So May is really the month that you're going to look at that getting off the wait list. So if you're not off the wait list by June, I think it's just not going to happen. That's what I would say. Okay. But again, I forgot about this. If you're transfer, then it can really go up until fall. But if we're talking about, freshman wait list, then you really should find out by June. I would say by June 15th at the latest, but it's already too late for you if you didn't already put your deposit down somewhere else. So you've got to put your deposit down by May 1st. So you don't really have a choice to wait on the wait list unless you hear back from somebody else, okay? And I mean, hear back from the college and you're already off of it. Okay, so Suzette asks a great question. Wow, this is about financial aid. Perfect. How does being waitlisted affect financial aid? Would I get less of a financial assistance? Right. Okay, Suzette. It really depends on the school. It really depends on the circumstances. It really depends on them. It really depends on you. So it depends on their budget, depends on who they admitted and what their financial circumstances were like, how much monies they already gave out. The school kind of gave out, or through, the government helped them give out in terms of loans and stuff. The other thing is, it really depends on, again, how competitive you are versus the other waitlisted people, right? So there's a bunch of factors here. So in a perfect world, the college would be need blind. They wouldn't care about your financial need, and if they admitted you off the wait list, they would give you the full funding, right? That would be the perfect world. And a lot of state schools tend to do that. So state schools tend to be a bit more need blind, and so do really wealthy private schools, but not all wealthy private schools. So I would say that if a school's not need blind, say if it's a private school and you're sort of like, somewhere in the middle of the pack on the wait list, or they don't rank the wait list, and they've already given out some money and they don't, then you could be at a slight disadvantage. You might not get all the monies that you need, but then nobody really typically always gets 100%. I mean, they say that, but there's always a little gap. So they might still do the gapping and might give you even less than they would give admitted freshmen. I think that would be the case. It really depends on how badly they want you and just a range of factors, or how badly they need you. So it's a great question. It's just going to be really hard. You're going to have to wait and figure it out. Now, Suzette, one thing that you should know, though, is the second you're admitted, you have the same rights, privileges that a regular admitted person has to negotiate your financial aid package. And by negotiating, what you can do is take other offers and say, hey, look, I got these other offers. This presents an opportunity cost. I'd love to go to your school. It's my first choice, but can we work something out? And I would go in person to try to talk to the financial aid officer if that helps you at all. I hope it does. Okay, so Sidra says, how long do they usually give you to make a decision if they take you off the wait list? Oh my gosh, that's so funny you asked that question. Sidra, you are asking amazing questions, the really perceptive strategic questions. Um, so here's the deal. If you're accepted off a wait list, they aren't going to give you much time to decide. They're going to say, they're not going to give you months to decide, or even, I would say, very much time at all. They're going to say, we want an answer really soon. And I would be surprised. I mean, now I don't know. It could change from by school to school. It could change from year to year. But if I were the schools and you put yourself in their shoes, I would say we'd want to know tomorrow, the day we give you the offer. If you're waitlisted, we would want to know the next day whether or not you're going to go, because then we're just going to go down the wait list, right? We don't want to waste time. So I would say they would want to know pretty much right away, the next day, next couple days. I would not wait on that. So if you do get off the wait list, just let them know right away what your decision is. Okay, I think we've run out. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions or things I want to mention, but I think I'm pretty much done with my presentation. Unless you have any other questions, I'll say goodbye. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. It's wonderful. Take care. Bye.